Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Brass Junkies. I'm your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by absolutely no one. Boy, do I wish that I could throw it to Lance right now and ask him how he was doing and have him give me some completely ridiculous answer that had me laughing before he even got to the funny part, because I knew what was coming was going to absolutely slay me. But alas, here we are. There's not even a co-host. This is just a one-off. I just wanted to give you all an update and also read you a little bit of a tribute that I wrote to Lance. So this is not a typical episode, so you are stuck with the sound of my voice. I apologize. Quickly, wanted to thank Parker Mouthpieces for their support. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba Mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model Euphonium Mouthpiece. You can find out more about them at parkermouthpieces.com. First of all, happy Thanksgiving to all of the American listeners out there. I know that you Canadians had it a while ago, but I love Thanksgiving. What is not to love? You get time off at a crazy time of year, and there's lots and lots and lots of great food. I guess I would love to hear what your favorite Thanksgiving food is. Mine is stuffing, believe it or not. And if you want a real next level trick, you got some leftover stuffing, put it in a waffle iron, like at the next day, like make a waffle out of stuffing. Your life has changed. You're welcome. But that is not why I brought you all here. First, I've already said, how many times have I said first? This is when Lance would be pointing out, like, you've said first 3 times, hippie, and it's like 2 minutes in. First of all, an announcement. The Brass Junkies is coming back, and I don't mean this random one-off episode where I just wanted to see myself on video for the first time in 2 years. These glasses, by the way, these are new since I last checked in with you on video. Definitely got more gray, a lot more gray in the beard. I'm a little grumpier, I think. Well, sometimes, but I've always been grumpy. So that's a good way to kind of segue into grumpy old age. Is if you've always been grumpy, you can kind of slide in there without people noticing right away. But if you have a great attitude and then start getting grumpy, like, oh, that dude's getting old. But I'm 50 now, which is kind of shocking to no one except for me. But anyway. Brass Junkies is coming back. I'm going to experiment with the format a little bit, and I'm going to see what works, meaning what resonates with you all. There are still going to be traditional episodes that are long-form interviews featuring a rotation of guest hosts. There's also going to be some shorter form stuff that will allow me to feature a wider range of people about a wider range of stuff. Wider ranger, the lone wider ranger of stuff. The exact vision for what it will look like is coming into focus now. I'm shooting for an early spring debut of season 3, which is probably March, but that is still officially TBD. For anyone who doesn't remember, I jokingly called episode 201, which was the first one after Lance stepped down. I referred to that as the beginning of season 2, which Lance thought it was absolutely hilarious that our 200 episodes were only considered one season. He laughed about that a lot. And speaking of which, this is a little dark humor, and I'm positive that Lance is somewhere absolutely laughing his ass off about this. After Lance stepped down, you cannot make this stuff up. When I did the math and figured this out, like maybe 3 weeks after he died, I started laughing uncontrollably. After Lance stepped down from the Brass Junkies, I started asking guests to share a remembrance about Lance, but I did it in a way and in a tone that suggested that he had passed away when he had simply left the show. I told Lance about this, and he found it completely hilarious because I think he even used the word brilliant to describe it. So I'm like, in like this fake somber tone, I'm asking people to remember Lance. Like all he did was amicably step down from a podcast, but I made it seem like he was gone forever. So now, and this is the part that I'm sure he's really amused about, there are about 20 guests who are essentially asked to comment on losing Lance, even though we had very much not lost him at the time. He was wicked, as we say in Boston. He was wicked alive. So I'm laughing through the question because it's completely ridiculous that I'm implying that he's gone. And then Lance actually passed away, and that makes the entire bit awkward as hell. This is exactly the kind of gallows humor that would have him howling. So I hope you are amused, Lance. So anyway, bottom line is if you hear anyone between episodes 201 and 221 that sounds rather flippant about losing Lance, it is because he was very much alive and they were playing along with a stupid bit that I created just to make Lance laugh. Anyway, moving right along. I actually have a couple of things already recorded, including a conversation that the frustratingly quick and funny Jennifer Wharton and I recorded live at the International Women's Brass Conference at the Hart School back in May. It was the first ever Brass Junkies live, and Lance and I had talked about doing that for like a decade, and it just never quite happened, and it was really awesome to see that vision become a reality. We spoke with the incredible Sasha Romero, principal trombone of the Metropolitan Opera, and to former Lance LaDuke student and current badass Nicole Guccione about what she learned from Lance and all the ways that she is applying it. Both Jennifer and I love talking to both of them, and I can't wait for you to hear it eventually. The other part of the announcement is that I have decided to move on from Patreon. I still have many, many supporters there, and I cannot thank them enough, but the time has come to shift the format and the frequency of the show, and that can't really happen with how Patreon is set up as of now. The expenses are still very much keep going for the show, and I actually really need money to support it. I've just been paying out of pocket for the last 2 years since there's been no money coming in. That's how Patreon works when it's a per episode thing. That's because a lot of things like hosting are ongoing. Anyways, since I know I will get questions literally the day this episode releases from a few loyal listeners, I promise to give you all a way to support the show soon, so stay tuned for that. Your unending support of TBJ is amazing, and I can't even begin to tell you how much you are appreciated. You can stay abreast of all of this stuff by going to brassjunkies.com. Before we go any further, I wanted to send some love to two people who have been really important to the show over the years, both of whom I think could use it right now. The first is to Ellen Pescheni, who just this week lost her beloved husband, Michael. If there was a Mount Rushmore of Brass Junkies fans over the years, then Ellen would absolutely be on it. She was a Patreon patron for years and years from the very beginning. She has enthusiastically spread the word about TBJ to anyone who would listen. She regularly offered us encouragement. She is simply the best, and I am heartbroken for her loss. So sending you love and support, Ellen. The other is to one of the best tuba players I have ever had the privilege of hearing in my life, Tom McCaslin. Tom is the principal tuba of the Calgary Philharmonic, and he has been battling various medical issues for a very long time. He's currently in the hospital, and I just wanted to send him love and to tell him that there are people all over the world pulling for him. Tom, I don't know when it will be, but I look forward to the next time I get to see you perform live so I can leave the performance as I do every time I've ever seen you play, which is muttering to myself and then heading straight to a practice room. I love you, brother. A quick plug about the latest from Hitz Academy. This is the last thing, and then I'm going to share the tribute that I wrote for Lance. How many times have you sat down to practice with the best of intentions only to find yourself frustrated, distracted, or leaving the practice room feeling like you just wasted a whole bunch of time? Yeah, me too, for years. But I finally learned a lot, and I don't actually have that experience with practicing anymore. And I put a ton of work into my first ever online course, and I'm really proud of it. It is called Practice Room Mastery, the 4Ms method. This course teaches you the mental strategies that separate good musicians from great musicians. You'll learn how to cultivate a growth mindset, build momentum in your practicing system, generate motivation on demand rather than waiting for motivation to visit you, and stay present even when it feels like your brain wants to be literally anywhere else. This isn't about practicing more hours. It's about getting better results in less time and actually enjoying the process. The course launches soon with 15 video lessons, lifetime access, and bonuses, including Lance LaDuke's incredible book, Music Practice Coach, which I'm throwing in with his blessing as a bonus. It launches soon, and I am offering a steep pre-sale discount just for listeners of the Brass Junkies, but you have to get on the list now. If you go to brassjunkies.com/practice room mastery or simply practiceroommastery.com and leave your email, you can sign up for the pre-sale today. There's no commitment to buy anything. There's also a video there that is less than 3 minutes that explains just a little bit more about the practice, about the course. I'm really proud of it, and it's just a culmination of everything I've learned from Arnold Jacobs to Sam Palafi and to everything I learned at the Empire Brass Seminar to Lance's music practice coach venture to everything. And I really hope that you dig it. All right. Last but not least, I wanted to share a tribute I wrote to Lance that originally appeared in the ITEA Journal about a year and a half ago, but I thought I would share it here because I think it got kind of buried. I think Lance would be the first to admit that his face didn't scream, "Put me on the cover." I kid. But see, my rule, by the way, now that he's gone, is that I feel comfortable making any joke about him that I would have and did make to his face, and he would be absolutely furious with me if I didn't actually make the make a joke now just because he's not here. That would make him mad. So that is not the way to honor him. Anyway, the piece wasn't it wasn't the cover, story of the journal, and it actually wasn't even one of the bullet points on the cover. And I think I got a total of literally one message from someone even saying that they read it. And Lance was the best, and in his honor, I would like these words to travel a little further than that. So I decided to read it to all of you, and a random one-off episode released on Thanksgiving seemed like the perfect time to do that. I have no idea if I'm going to be able to read this without crying. Maybe so, maybe not. I actually haven't read it since I wrote it, which was a long time ago. So let's see if I'm sobbing through this. Ooh, there's no Kleenex within reach. This is an aggressive move here. So we will see how this goes. See, I'm a knucklehead. If I were you, I would lovingly be like rooting for me to cry, but we'll see. Okay, here we go. Before I begin, I feel the need to apologize for this not being a, quote, normal in memoriam. You aren't supposed to eulogize someone using a first-person voice because that makes the tribute about you. General wisdom says that if you use I, me, or my more than a handful of times, that you have failed the assignment. But if there's one thing I am sure of, it is that Lance would be absolutely furious with me if I wrote a, quote, normal tribute to him that simply listed his countless accomplishments as a performer, teacher, and advocate. He would truly hate that because he never did anything normal in his career, and when occasionally forced to, he always had his eye on the next thing. It's not just that Lance wouldn't appreciate a tribute like that. The truth is that it would completely fail to capture the incredible impact he had on the tuba euphonium community, the music business, and the world at large. So instead of listing his accomplishments, I have chosen to talk about a few of the attributes that Lance embodied in his career and life. So if I may be so bold, here is a rather unconventional tribute to a man who was a dear friend, colleague, and mentor to so many, Lance LaDuke. Artistry. Simply put, Lance was one of the best musical storytellers the brass world has ever known. He prided himself on being a musician first and foremost, not just someone who operated an instrument at a world-class level. Whether he was holding a euphonium, a trombone, a ukulele, or singing, his primary objective was always communicating a musical idea or emotion to the listener. He was able to do that through technical mastery combined with a crystal clear vision of what he was trying to sound like and what message he was trying to convey. He was one of the most rewarding musicians I've ever had the privilege of playing with. We could be performing some staple of the Boston brass repertoire for the 200th time, and if I changed one tiny thing that had never been different before, he would pick up on it every single time, sometimes before I even finished the musical idea. And he would, of course, steer things in slightly new musical directions himself, often in unpredictable ways. Even when there was a script, there really was no script. You always had to be on your toes when playing with Lance, or you could easily miss the magic because he was always ready for a musical conversation to go in any direction. That is a rare quality, even at the very top of the music profession. His playing was sometimes so incredibly good that it was easy to not notice just how remarkable what he was doing truly was. For those of us who had the privilege of standing or sitting next to him over a long stretch of time, it was easy to take what he was doing musically for granted. He just made everything sound and look so effortless. But when you took a moment to truly take it in, it would take your breath away. Work ethic. Every time I heard Lance tell the story of how he prepared for his ultimately successful audition for the United States Air Force Band, I would be sure to watch the faces of the students as he told it, because the reaction was the same everywhere he went. In graduate school, he was a teaching assistant for the band department. This was a strategic move because he knew the job came with a key to the band office, meaning he could practice as late as he wanted any night of the week. He then made a plan that he stuck to religiously. He practiced 5 nights a week, Sunday through Thursday, from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m., 5 days a week after week, month after month. But his plan was more detailed than that. He kept getting hungry partway through these 4-hour sessions, so he brought a hot pot into the office and made himself instant ramen at around midnight every night. The calories and the short break would help him focus on the back half of his practice session. Here's the best part of his plan. He did his research and learned that military band auditions in those days relied heavily on sight reading. The way he described it, if you were a serious candidate, they would make you sight read obscure band excerpt after obscure band excerpt until they found your limit. Knowing this meant he practiced sight reading excerpts quite a bit, as anyone would. He acquired a 3-ring binder filled with photocopies of seemingly every military band excerpt ever written, sorted in alphabetical order by composer. Each day he would simply pick up in the alphabet where he left off the day before. But he didn't simply practice a lot of sight reading. He was much more intentional than that. His research also told him that sight reading always came at the end of the audition when you were physically and mentally drained, and that is why he always reserved the final hour of every practice session to work on sight reading. 5 days a week at 1 a.m. and immediately following a 3-hour practice session, when his chops and brain would be at their most tired, he intentionally practiced the very thing that ended up deciding many military band auditions at that point in time. His approach was intentional, targeted, and methodical. The reaction of students around the world when they heard how intentional he was about the entire process, from getting a job that would allow him to practice long after the music building was locked for the night, to practicing sight reading when he would be most tired to best simulate an actual audition, was priceless. A phrase I frequently heard him use while teaching was work smarter, not harder. But he did both, and as a result turned himself into one of the greatest euphonium players the world has ever known. Curiosity. Lance had a thirst for knowledge that never relented. He easily sent me more articles, podcast episodes, YouTube videos, and recordings that he thought might inspire me than every other colleague I've ever had combined. This was because he was always consuming knowledge in search of his next source of inspiration. He was fascinated by technology, specifically how it will be used by artists moving forward to help them express themselves. Teaching at a school like Carnegie Mellon meant having access to all sorts of technologies, and he encouraged the students there to embrace those resources to see how they could serve their artistic pursuits. This culminated in the Modern Musicking Show, a show by and for students about music technology. He used this show as the vehicle to empower students to not only get creative about technology, but utilize it in an outward-facing way. For a brief stretch, he capitalized on his desire to learn new things by hosting a show called Lance Learns to Play, a hilarious attempt at learning everything from bagpipes to alpenhorn. You can see the joy he brought to learning new things in each of those videos, which can be found on YouTube. The happiest people I know in the music business all share one trait. No matter what level of success they attain in music, they remain teachable. Unhappy professional musicians tend to be people who are like sponges that are already completely saturated with water. Lance was the opposite. He was constantly looking for the next thing as both a teacher and a performer. Generosity. After his death, I received countless emails from people who simply wanted to share some specific story about Lance's generosity and how it impacted them. One such email came from a woman who is now a college professor and a rising star in our business. She emailed us a few years ago to thank us for having a female guest on the Brass Junkies who had talked about being a woman in a very much male-dominated brass profession. Her email included details of a recent incident that did not have her feeling particularly seen or welcome as a young female brass player. Lance replied to her on our behalf, and his email was long, thoughtful, and perfect in every way. He encouraged her to not empower the people who were trying to make her feel like she didn't belong, but in a way that was very much not giving her advice, since, as he said in his response, he had no way to know what she was experiencing and would never presume to know what she should or shouldn't do. His response was kind, supportive, and empathetic. She belonged, and beyond that, we needed people just like her to move the profession forward. In her email to me after Lance died, she said that interaction with him changed the course of her life and career. She was filled with gratitude that he took the time to not only respond, but to do so in such an incredibly thoughtful way. This is just one example of many. Whenever anyone showed even the smallest amount of enthusiasm, Lance would respond in kind in a way that left the other person energized. He had a gift when helping people. He didn't just give them the knowledge they lacked to move forward, he also left them positive that they could get past whatever obstacle lay in front of them. He also shared a trait with one of his mentors, the late, great Sam Palafian. Even if someone only met Lance one time, they truly felt like they knew him. Sam was the exact same way. That is because both of them were their authentic selves all of the time. Many listeners of the Brass Junkies have reached out since he passed to tell me they never got the chance to meet him but still feel like they knew him. That's because the Lance they got to know through the show is the true Lance. He was the same person before we started recording as he was while we were recording. And he was the same person off stage as he was on stage. Thousands upon thousands of people got to know the real Lance because he was always his authentic self. Courage. Back in 2005, we knew we were going to have a trombone opening in Boston Brass, and one of us mentioned that fact to Lance when we were passing through Pittsburgh. Lance replied, "You should hire a euphonium," with a smile. He was then told half-jokingly, "You should learn to play the trombone," to which, without hesitation, he said, "Okay," and that's exactly what he did. He didn't even own a trombone and never had in his life, yet he had the audacity and the courage to know that he could do it. I personally think it's pretty incredible when any adult even has the courage to learn a second instrument as a minor double for a show. But to have the audacity to learn a second instrument to the level where you could join a full-time brass quintet that is touring internationally, that's amazing. Here's the really important takeaway for me. Of the 3 trombonists we auditioned in the finals, he was by far the worst trombone operator. For the record, that is not commentary on his trombone abilities, but on those of the other 2. They had each been professionals for years and were truly exceptional trombone players and musicians. There was no possible chance that Lance or anyone could get that accomplished on any instrument in just 8 months when starting from scratch. But the ground he covered in that brief period of time was nothing short of astonishing, and that, combined with his vision for where he wanted to take the group, which I will speak to next, meant he essentially left us no choice but to hire him. Sure enough, his trombone playing continued to improve through the years, and the only thing he needed to get this entire thing rolling was courage. He was already one of the best euphonium players the world had ever known and could have stayed in his lane and had no problem making a living, or as he liked to put it, living indoors and eating food as a professional musician. By getting out of his comfort zone, he ran the risk of embarrassing himself and of public failure. He could have failed to win the job and, in the process, quote, wasted 8 months of his life that he never would have gotten back. But he set his sights on a lofty goal and dedicated himself in a way that few of us, even those of us lucky enough to play for a living, have ever done. Many people would play it safe and let the possible embarrassment of failing prevent them from going for something like this in the first place. Not Lance. I have always found that level of courage contagious, and he frequently challenged me to be a better version of myself simply by being who he was. I can't think of a greater compliment than that. Vision. The interview portion of the finals for the Boston Brass trombone audition went well for all 3 candidates. Any of them could have come on board, assumed an ownership position, we were an equal partnership, and helped us to move forward as an organization. But there was something about Lance that was different. We asked him where he saw Boston Brass going in the next 5 years, and he had a more detailed vision, both artistically and from a business standpoint, than the 4 of us had, and we owned the group. And I want to be clear, the 4 of us absolutely had a vision for where we wanted to go, so this is not in any way commentary about a lack of vision from any of my colleagues or of Boston Brass as a whole. It's just that Lance had an incredibly specific plan that he was able to articulate perfectly. Not just goals, but how we were going to achieve them. He said, "Here are the dots as I see them, and here is how we are going to connect them." He revolutionized our programming, which was already really great, which I can say because I had nothing to do with. He ushered in the era of collaborations, which Boston Brass continues to this day, which saw us sharing the stage with the Tang Quartet, Amani Winds, and the Enzo Quartet. He also fundamentally changed how we interacted with audiences, which was already one of our calling cards. I want to be really clear about my colleagues. Lance didn't save Boston Brass. We were thriving at the time. Our international gigs had started to take off, and we were playing bigger halls all the time. That was largely because of the vision and follow-through of my colleagues. So Lance didn't save Boston Brass, but he did fundamentally change the direction of the group, both artistically and as a business. And it's actually more impressive that he did so when we were experiencing so much success. When a group is floundering, it is much easier for someone to come in and make changes because everyone realizes they are needed. For a group achieving success, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is generally the attitude, and that's not necessarily bad. But Lance, through his reputation and his humanity, was given the power to make changes right away. I would actually argue that those changes stated during his interview. Excuse me, I was right. I would actually argue that those changes started during his interview, meaning before he was even officially hired. He truly gave us no chance but to hire him. He would also be mad if I went in and edited this or re-recorded it, so I'm just going to keep going. Advocacy. Lance was a fierce advocate for not only his students, but also for the euphonium as an instrument. He was an outspoken critic of having the euphonium so frequently taught at the college level by tuba players who simply doubled on the euphonium when so many incredible euphonium teachers were available. He was also an advocate for the ability to have a career as a professional euphonium player without playing in a military band. I heard Lance tell many young musicians over the years about his time in the Air Force Band and about how he spent years trying to win the job, and in retrospect, no time whatsoever trying to figure out whether having the job would make him happy if he was successful. For those of you who haven't heard him tell the story, he figured out within a few weeks of being in the Air Force Band that it was not a good fit for him. And then in parentheses, a very important side note, his story always included the fact that he had many friends who were very happy in military bands and some who weren't as happy. Every time I heard him talk about this, he would go out of his way to make it clear that he was not trying to talk any euphonium player out of pursuing a career in a military band. He simply encouraged them to find out as much as possible about what the job would actually be like and to see if that would be the best fit for them rather than blindly pursuing that path because it was expected by serious players of the instrument. The most important part of his message was making sure that students knew that playing in a military band was not the only path to, quote, making it as a professional euphonium player. He not only conveyed that message with words, but also through his actions. His career embodied the concept of a portfolio career, having many different income streams that all add up to a full-time living as a musician. From joining pre-existing things like River City Brass Band or Boston Brass to forming brand new things like the Nothing But Valves Brass Quartet or the Brass Junkies, he empowered young euphonium players by showing them what was possible. Something Lance took very seriously was using the platform he had built through the Brass Junkies in his multiple decades in the music business to advocate for representation in the brass world. Lance was a champion for making our various online offerings, like the Brass Junkies Summer Workshop, feature a number of women and people of color on the faculty, and smiled when we received numerous private messages from colleagues commending us on the diversity of our artist roster. But above all, he dreamed of a world where diversity like that was so normal that it would not be commendable, but rather expected. He also encouraged others to do their part to help make that vision a reality. Humor. Lance was the funniest person I've ever known. He was lightning quick with one-liners, sometimes infuriatingly so. His ability to size up any situation and offer some sort of clever observation that the entire room would still be thinking about the next day was unparalleled. He frequently used humor as a teaching tool to make a student performing in a masterclass feel less nervous or to help a fellow musician perform at their best in a high-stress situation. And he was an absolute master on the microphone. He could charm a crowd unlike anything I've ever seen. He was so personable with audiences that it really felt like you got to know him, when in reality, you had only heard him speak from the stage for a total of 5 minutes. That is truly a gift. But calling it a gift makes it sound like he was born with these abilities, and that is not even close to the full story. None of this was a coincidence. If you saw his bookshelf, half of the books were about comedy and comedians. He studied stand-up comedy and cut his teeth in an improv troupe when he was younger. He analyzed the greats like one of his heroes, Steve Martin. He studied his timing, when he said what he said, and when silence would best serve the joke. He then took all of those observations and applied them to his own material. He was still learning about comedy and striving to get better until the very end. Just like the greatest players in the world, the great comedians were not born as finished products on the comedy front. They honed their craft over many years until they became the versions the rest of us know and love. Lance's dedication to comedy, just like his dedication to so many things in life, was a lifelong commitment to learning and a great example for all of us of what is possible with sustained effort over a prolonged period of time. Passion for teaching. Every once in a while, you encounter someone in music whose teaching instantly makes yours better. That was Lance the first time I ever saw him teach. Many musicians who give frequent masterclasses tend to talk about the same few subjects over and over again. If you've seen one of their classes, it feels like you've seen them all. That was the opposite of Lance's teaching. He was a true master at teaching the student in front of him, and as a result, taught everyone differently. Over the years, I saw him coach everyone from beginners to professional musicians, and he was just as comfortable delving into the technical, like a highly detailed deep dive into someone's embouchure, as he was focusing on the cerebral, like encouraging a player to take more risks in order to free themselves from their own expectations. The best teachers in the world have no preconceptions about what they are going to say to someone until they hear them play and briefly get to know who they are and what they are trying to achieve, and Lance embodied this. And he always taught in a way that brought the entire room along for the journey. When the player had a breakthrough, the entire room felt like they were a part of it. He was truly a master teacher who lives on in everyone he ever worked with. He also challenged his own private students to be the best possible versions of themselves week after week and to draw their own maps rather than following someone else's. One of his former Carnegie Mellon students shared with me that at her first lesson, he asked what she wanted to accomplish as a student. She answered that she wanted to master excerpts so she could win a job with a military band. His response was, "I'm guessing that's not what you really want, or else you wouldn't have come here to study with me. What do you really want to do in music?" She credits this as a breakthrough moment in her career. He gave her permission to pursue any path she wanted in music rather than simply following the usual path for a euphonium player. Or rather, he encouraged her to give herself permission to draw her own map. He always encouraged students to be the best and most authentic versions of themselves that they could possibly be. I would love to keep writing in an effort to summarize just how special Lance was as a musician and a human being. I haven't even touched on his dedication to his beloved children, Quinn and Duncan, or his wife Hannah, or how phenomenal he was as a friend, just an absolute rock for so many. I also haven't gotten into the countless musical endeavors and side projects he was passionately involved in over the last 35 years. I could write another 10,000 words about all of it, but I will spare you all and end this tribute here. It is an overused cliche to say that someone left the world a better place than they found it. But whoever first uttered those words oh so many years ago was surely saying them about someone exactly like Lance. He lives on in all of the Brass Junkies interviews, the albums he recorded, the books he wrote, and in every single one of us who studied with him, performed with him, and created with him. Lance was truly a gift, and we were lucky to be on this journey with him for as long as we were. And then at the end, there was a little note that said to learn more about Lance's career, including a list of the almost 40 recordings he appeared on in his career, please go to andrewhitz.com/Lance. So there it was. There was my tribute to Lance for the ITEA Journal. It's funny, I honestly didn't know if I was going to cry or not, and I didn't even have to fight back tears. Yeah, I mean, it's been some time, but also there's a chance that if I had recorded this in 3 days at the right time of day, that I would have been fighting back tears multiple times. It's just kind of the way that it is. So, but Lance, man, it is so stupid that you're gone. It's just stupid. Yeah, his amazing daughter Quinn was here 1 week ago, and came to DC for his show, and she stayed here, and we were hanging out, and we both agree that it's just stupid that you're gone. But we had a lot of laughs, and yeah, you are dearly missed. So. Thank you all for humoring me with this one-off. This is just me talking for over half an hour, which for a few of you sickos is like is an appealing thing, and then for the rest of you is like something, if you're still listening, that you have endured. So bless those of you who are in the endure camp. Brass Junkies is going to come back. I really can't wait. I'm really excited. I got some very cool ideas, I think, and we'll see if they resonate with everyone. And again, go to practiceroommastery.com to check out just a little bit more information about my practicing course. You give your email, zero pressure whatsoever to buy anything. But I think if you want to get more done in less time in the practice room, this is the course for you. It's just everything I've learned over the last 40 years about practicing in one course. So, and sending love to Ellen and to Tom and to all of you for listening. And that's going to do it for another episode of the Brass Junkies.